Yeah, hello, Helen Johnson, Vice President of Carers Australia and on the board of Carers Vic. Hello, Mary. Inspirational speech, well done. I'd like to say I am a holder of the ISP in Victoria. I believe Victoria could model very similar into the NDIS. I think the nation could learn from what Victoria is doing. The only issue is there are still many Victorians waiting for an ISP. The other issue, I was going to put it up to Patricia, but I'll put it to you, in what you said, is the capacity building. There is a huge issue with the ability for those who choose to go out and live alone or live with someone or live supported by someone, supported accommodation, but also the opportunity of creative and various respite. It's a huge issue, and I urge the Productivity Commissioner, I urge everyone here to put it forward that we need to push for capacity building on the ground in our local area. My example is we do not have supported accommodation 50, 60 k's either way of my town. My town's a big city. It's a problem and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed even before the NDIS is introduced.
I'm lucky the state budget's tomorrow, not yesterday, I think, but absolutely, recognise completely. And that's why, I mean, and it's not, I don't think, a comfortable thing for governments to say that we believe a system that we own and operate and fund is broken. But that's the reality, is that it is. The fact is we don't have enough money to do what we believe we should be doing for people with a disability. We have thousands on waiting lists for individual support packages, for supported accommodation, even for day services. And there's lots of other issues as well. And so that's why we're so committed that this transition needs to happen, so we get away from that waiting list mentality and onto the entitlement-based scheme. The other thing I'll say generally in relation to supported accom and respite, one of the things we're very keen to do is make sure we maintain the ability to innovate as well. And that's both within the state but also as we move to a national scheme. So one of the things we're looking to do is make sure that we have a much greater spectrum of what supported accommodation looks like, rather than a 4 or 5 bed CRU. What respite looks like, what is some flexibility and some ideas about how we can deliver accommodation and support differently that may and will reflect different needs that individuals with a disability have. So what we're seeking to do is to drive some of that innovation into the system now to continue to help us and make sure that we can continue to innovate, even if we are part of a national, and hopefully, confident we will be, part of a national agenda in the future as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thanks very much for coming today. It's really great.
Thank you.
We now have a very exciting part of the day that's sort of changed a little bit because we're very flexible. So we're very pleased to welcome back Senator McLucas to the stage, and to welcome Senator Mitch Fifield and Senator-elect Richard Di Natale. And as well, we've got Patricia Scott up here, and we've got John Walsh, Associate Commissioner to the Productivity Commission. And I'll introduce our new people because Jan and Patricia have been introduced. So Senator Mitch Fifield was sworn in as a Senator for Victoria in the Australian Parliament in 2004 and re-elected in 2007. He was appointed the Shadow Minister for Disabilities, Carers and the Voluntary Sector in 2010, and also serves as Manager of Opposition Business in the Senate and as Chairman of the Senate Finance and Public Administration References Committee. Is that Senate estimates? Because I've got to appear in front of them soon, so you be nice to me, won't you? Mitch, that's a personal plea. And he's also a member of the Senate-elect Committee on the Scrutiny of New Taxes. I'll go back. Who's your football team? I think
Hawthorn.
Hawthorn. Oh, okay. Well, that's enough to introduce. I think that's. I'm not going to tell you who mine is. Senator-elect Richard Di Natale, who comes in on the 30th of June. Yep. 1st of July, is the Australian Greens' first Victorian senator, and will take up his seat on July the 1st. It's here. He will be the Greens spokesperson on health, gambling, multiculturalism, and sport. And I mean the interface with health, the need to integrate sport. I mean, I don't know about gambling, I think we might leave that one out. and there's a lot of multicultural communities as part of this group. Richard is a medical doctor and a public health specialist, and he spent several years working in Aboriginal health in the Northern Territory and in the international development sector working on HIV projects in India, and he is a long-suffering Richmond fan. So we're going to ask Mitch, Senator Barfield and Senator-elect Di Natale to speak for 10 minutes each, and then we're going to throw it open. John, you might like to make a few comments, and then we'll throw it open to questions and discussion for the rest of the afternoon, and we're going to creep into drinks time because we think this is so very important. So Mitch, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks very much, Rhonda. Boy, there's a lot of you. But I've got to say, as I look out, I don't see an audience, I don't see a crowd. What I see are a lot of people who I know, people who I have an investment in their future and an investment in their well-being. So it's great to see so many of you here today. At the outset, could I acknowledge a few of the generals of the sector, if I could put it that way. Tim Walton, the President of NDS, Richard Dent, the Chair of NDS here in Victoria, Ken Baker, the terrific CEO of NDS, Dean Barton-Smith, the Chair of AFDO, Leslie Hall, the AFDO CEO, Tim Moore, the Carers Australia President, and the magnificent Bruce Bonyhady. Bruce brings calmness and persistence in equal measure to this great cause, and he is very much the intellectual driving force behind the idea of a new national scheme. So Bruce, it's wonderful to see you as always. If I could also acknowledge the multifaceted and multi-talented Rhonda Galbally and the various hats that she wears, and my colleagues Jan McLucas and Richard Di Natale. But I'd also like to acknowledge John Della Bosca, who is the National Campaign Chair for an NDIS. I think it's great to see people who have served in public life seek to put back into the community in their post-political life. So hats off to you, John, for the great work that you're doing at the moment. And if I could start off by congratulating the National Disability and Carers Alliance for bringing a common voice and a common purpose to this great endeavour to deliver a better deal for Australians with disability. There is still a long, long way to go. Most Australians are still blissfully ignorant, you could say, of the situation that too many Australians with a disability face and their carers. Could I congratulate the Productivity Commission on the outstanding job that they've done to date, and particularly to congratulate Patricia Scott on the work that she's done. She's a deep thinker, she is a very committed and thoughtful public servant, and also to her Associate Commissioner, John Walsh, for his ongoing commitment and contribution. I think in the Productivity Commission report, there were two things that excited me above and beyond anything else. The first was that the Productivity Commission declared clearly that any new system must be based around the individual, that it must have the individual at its heart, at the centre and in control. But I think perhaps the even more simple yet profound statement that the Productivity Commission made was that decent support for Australians with disability should be core government business. That if you were starting from scratch, that if you were starting with a clean slate and you're asking yourself the question, what should be one of the what should be one of the fundamental tasks of government, that you'd say decent support for people with disabilities, decent funding for disabilities. It's simple, it's obvious to all of us, but the Productivity Commission really is the first significant government organisation to actually make that statement loud and clear. The Productivity Commission have offered a ray of hope. They have given us a glimpse as to what a better future for people with disabilities might look like. But in the interim, I think all governments have got to be very careful, both state and federal, not to use a pending national scheme, not to use the prospect of a new national arrangement on the horizon, not to do something to improve things in the meantime. It's important that government takes up the challenge to do something before a new national scheme to help improve the system of rationing. It would be, I think, a great pity if all hope was invested in the NDIS and improvements weren't made in the meantime. I think that's a challenge for government. Now, I think those in the sector, quite rightly and quite understandably, have an extremely low threshold for partisan point scoring in the area of disabilities. And for good reason. People with disabilities, their families, carers, they just want the system fixed. They're not interested in petty politics and distractions. Having said that, we as an opposition, we do have a role to critique, to probe and to question. And that process, that role, does, I think, lead hopefully to governments governing better. But having said that, let me be very clear and let me be very unequivocal that for its part, the federal opposition won't be looking for ways of putting stumbling blocks in the place of a better deal. We will be looking for ways and means to see that a better, a proper, new national deal for Australians with disability gets up and gets into place. And I think that's what people want, that's what people expect. Change of this magnitude, however, can only come about as a result of the efforts of the government of the day. And to that end, I do want to give credit to the Government of Victoria for establishing a National Disability Insurance Scheme implementation group, for offering Victoria to be a test bed for a new national scheme, and for also setting up an NDIS advisory group that really shows, I think, Mary Wooldridge's and Ted Baillieu's commitment to a better deal. Although I am a mere shadow minister, I see the role that I have as the Shadow Minister for Disabilities and Carers as probably the most important public office that I will hold, short of us actually being in government in that role. But I do see this role that I have, as I say, as probably the most important that I will have in public office. And the reason for that is, even from opposition, it is possible to encourage and to have input and to push for good policy and for a new national deal for people with disabilities. And I can't think of any other area of government activity that is in greater need of reform and change than the area of disabilities. And I think one of the problems there's been in achieving change is that too often, just as the sector gets a new minister or a new shadow trained up, they move to a different portfolio, that there's not been that continuity to help bring about a different outcome. And it was very much with the words of those at the Mad as Hell rally ringing in my ears that after the last election, I said to Tony Abbott that there were two things I wanted to see.